If you just finished the MYP and are about to head into the IBDP program, there are a few important things that you need to know and a few important mistakes that I wish I didn't make when I entered the IBDP program. Hello, everybody. My name is Joaquin Revello. I'm a current UPenn Wharton dual degree engineering student, and I graduated in the IB in May of 2021 with the exam route, and I got a perfect 45 in the diploma program. Now, the reason why I'm making this video is actually because one of my siblings is about to get into and begin the IBDP program, grade 11 per se. And I wanted to outline some of my thoughts, what I would have done differently, what is important to know coming from the MYP, and how you can make the best out of this experience and get the highest mark possible. All right. So my overall experience is as follows. I got out of the MYP in, 2019? Going into 2019. So I started fall of 2019 with the DP program. And my overall experience of the MYP was not the best. Okay, I was not a particularly bright student during that time. And I think one of the reasons why that was the case was just the entourage, the large amounts of written assignments that I had to complete. As you know, in the MYP program, especially with sciences, the actual test taking criterion that they analyze your test taking skills on is typically only one or maximum two criteria, right? If I remember correctly, the math exams was a criteria A and a criteria C, with criteria C being the communication and then criteria A being the actual knowledge and understanding. So in that respect, the test only accounted for roughly 50% of your total MYP marks. Meanwhile, the other 50% were made up of less test and analytical approaches and more written types of essays and the likes of that. And that was not my particularly strong suit. All right. And I realized when I went into the IBDP, and actually even before that, that wasn't my strong suit. So throughout all of grade 10, my last year of my MYP, I spent as much time as I possibly could honing in on this skill of writing, honing in on this skill of expressing myself clearly and succinctly towards answering assignments in the MYP. And frankly, it kind of did pay off right at the end of grade 10, especially as I was going into the World Scholars Cup, which is an academic competition. However, I didn't really get to see the full fruits of that labor until after I was done with the IB and I went into university. And only now am I really starting to see how all those essays that I written, because I remember I was writing one essay per week. I was writing one essay per week throughout grade 10, grade 11, and grade 12. And it's only now that that's really started to showcase in my university. So something that I quote unquote would have done differently throughout my experience would be spend more time analyzing and working on the essays throughout the MYP program. That would have improved my MYP marks. However, the IB program is not like that. As you likely know, the IB program for most subjects, I believe excluding arts, there might be another set of subjects, but from what I remember, excluding arts, all subjects have an 80-20 split, where 80% of your marks comes from the final exam that you take at the end of your IBDP 2 year, which is an accumulation of all of the knowledge that you've gained throughout the 2 years. And then the other 20% is what is known as the IA, or the internal assessment. Now, the internal assessment, I found that after you do a lot of practice, right? And by the way, internal assessment is simply an essay or a lab report or something that you do inside of your own class internally, and then is sent off to the IB to be marked. It's also, as a side note, it's also marked by your teacher before being sent, and they predict your score. Or I believe your teacher gives you the mark and then they send a batch randomly to the IB to make sure that your marking is on point. That's why it's called the IA. And that really tends to be the only essay in class written assignments. Are some of the tests essays? Absolutely. But that leads me to the other 80%, which is test taking, which is timed test taking conditions. This is 80% compared to MYP, which was maybe 25 or 50% of the mark. This is 80%. So there is a greater emphasis on this type of content. And that's very important. And naturally, that actually played to my strengths. So I think I got a little bit lucky here, where if it was reversed, maybe if MYP had more tests and less assignments, I likely wouldn't have done as well as the way it was right now, where it was more test and assignment. So that tends to be my experience with the tests and assignments. I would spend all of my time basically doing the test. And then I was going to make earlier was that the IAs are in many ways gameable. I mean, they have a very strict criterion that you can follow and then get the bullet point marks. And I I remember in physics, I spent the first half of my IBDP 1 year just mastering every single bullet point on that criterion. And by mastering every single bullet point, I knew exactly what I needed to do in order to get the highest marks, specifically for that IA, which I ended up getting. This compares to the tests, which you don't know, right? A lot of it comes down to uncertainty, it comes down to luck, it comes down to how fast you can react in those 2 hours or 1 hour and a half that you have to write every paper. I also preferred the fact that the IB was more standardized. Instead of my mark being almost solely determined by my teacher, as in the MYP, I really like how the IB for the most part, especially the tests, were marked externally and not influenced at all by my teachers. And the reason why I found that particularly helpful, and you're gonna notice the difference when you go off into university and basically nothing is done that way. The reason why I like that so much was because it was very easy to know exactly what you had to do to get a good mark. Is the MYP like this with the criterion? Yes, but I think that the IBDP is even more rigorous than that. Not only is this with the IAs and EEs, but the biggest example I can think of is my paper 1 for economics, which I was able to get, if I remember correctly, I believe I got a 9 out of 10 for that paper, at least in practice, because I was doing it so many times that I knew exactly what the IB was looking for with the rubric. So that's briefly talking about the differences between the two. There's a few important things to note. The first of which is the fact that content comes much faster in the IB. I never really felt like it was a treadmill per se, or just a water hose of information unlike Grizzly Elite. But compared to the MYP, I definitely felt that there was an acceleration in pace. And I used this following strategy to make sure to keep up with that acceleration. Essentially what I would do, and this is a 3-step process that I suggest everyone follow. Number 1, I would pre-study the material before class began. This was extraordinarily helpful. Even if I just briefly looked through it for 5 minutes before, just briefly reading the textbook or just watching one YouTube video, that was almost enough to increase my retention by upwards of 40%. Then number 2 is I showed up to class and I listened to the content being taught again in detail and in slow motion. Because typically when we read content or we're watching a YouTube video, we tend to put it on 2 times speed, or we tend to just quickly read through the content. That is a very fast way to absorb information, and it's typically not that deep. And then number 3, and this was the big one that got my mark from, like, let's say a 4 in my first math exam, or my first math test, to a 7, was doing practice questions. You can find tons of practice questions online, maybe even some past papers. Just do as many as you possibly can and do them consistently as well. I had a habit of studying, maybe it was 3 to 4 hours every single day of just doing past paper questions. All right, which leads me to the number 1 strategy for doing well in the IB if you're from an MYP background. The first of which is to consistently study. I talked about this in one of my previous videos, but the mind can only take up 3 to 4 hours of focused work per day, which means that if you try to cram all before the exams or cram all before a test, you're not utilizing your brain at the maximum potential. Because let's say you try to cram before a test, you're going to be fresh for, let's say, the first 3 to 4 hours, but after that, you're going to start to get diminishing results. So I attribute the fact that I studied 3 to 4 hours every single day as a huge hack in getting top marks in the IB. And it's not only with, let's say, doing tests, but also with your IAs and EEs. You need enough time for your brain to fully conceive of valuable ideas that you can write in your EE or in your IA. So this does not necessarily mean to start early. I know a lot of people say start early, start early. I don't necessarily think that's the right way to go. I instead think that consistent discipline on working on that is probably your best bet, because every single time you step into your EE and into your IA, you have something slightly different that's going on in your life, right? Maybe you step at it at the beginning of the day when you just wake up, or maybe you step at it after you go play some sports, or maybe you step at it after a test to work on your IA. Whatever the case may be, you're approaching these assignments from a slightly different frame of mind. And that slightly different frame of mind allows you to come up with new ideas and new ways of thinking that you otherwise would not have gotten if you tried to just cram it all at once. If you want to read my extended essay for free, my entire grade A physics extended essay, you can do so by typing in the term extended essay in the Easter egg link down below. In all my videos, I include Easter eggs, which are special codes that you can add that give you small rewards. You can do so by typing in extended essay in the link down below at grizzlyelite.com/Easter egg. Type in extended essay down below and you can get to read my entire extended essay for free. That's again, grizzlyelite.com/Easter egg. Type in the code extended essay, one word, no space. Doesn't matter how you capitalize it, just write it like you normally would. Type it into the link down below. and you'll get that. All right, so number one is consistent studying. You don't need to necessarily start early, but do study consistently, which oftentimes means that you do need to get an earlier start. Number two is have correct energy strategies. All right, I want to make this disclaimer right here. I was able to get a perfect 45 in the IB while spending all of Sunday skiing with my friends and family in the winter during the busiest time in the IB, which was, when was this? December, January, February of my IB2 and IB1 year. All right, so if anyone ever says that you don't sleep at all during the IB, that is actually not true. In fact, during the entire IB, I think it was only 10 times that I got under 8 hours and only one time where I got under 7 hours of sleep. So it's definitely possible. I was sleeping about 8.5 hours on average per day. Again, if you just stay consistent and do 3 to 4 hours every single day, it's really not that bad. And by 3 to 4 hours, I mean 3 to 4 hours of intense flow. I used to do this on the bus. So in the morning, I'd spend roughly an hour and a half on the bus in a state of flow doing past paper questions, then on the bus back. So that was roughly an hour as well. And then I'd spend 30 minutes when I get back, and then I have the rest of the evening. So from roughly 6 to until the time I went to bed, 9, I had the rest of the evening to work on whatever else I had to do, any other extracurriculars or any other work that might still be remaining. But what's most important is that I got a focused amount of time in those 3 to 4 hours. And if you do that, you don't need to give up hours of your sleep. So as well, on that point, not only is sleep essential, but nutrition as well as exercise is very, very important. In fact, I had a student that I was working with last year who mentioned that one of the biggest changes he had was simply starting to work out, right? He did not work out, and then he went to the gym, something simple like, I believe it was 1 hour to the gym, and that had a huge improvement in his energy levels and in his confidence, which directly translated to better performance in every single aspect of his life. All right. So make sure you implement that. Have consistent energy levels. And then the third point I want to make, and this is my last point, is that you need to identify what type of person you want to become. Okay. What exactly do I mean by this? I want you to, before you enter the IB, take a step back and outline what type of person do you want to be throughout the IB. Do you want to be a stressed person? Do you want to be a high achieving person? Do you want to be someone who is on top of things? Do you want to be someone who slacks off? Do you want to be someone who has time to play video games? Do you want to be someone who has time to play sports? Do you want to be someone who hangs out with your friends? Whatever the case may be. I want you to clearly identify what type of person, and more importantly, what type of lifestyle you want to live in the IB. Because most people go in, they have absolutely no idea. They are basically at the end of a tether string to whatever assignment goes, and then they don't end up living the lifestyle that they want. They're maybe overstressed, overworked, overdepressed, whatever the case may be, and then they crash and burn, and at the end of it, they're crying and complaining on the Reddit that they didn't get the score they want. So outline exactly the type of lifestyle you want. And for most people, the lifestyle that they want maybe is not actually getting a 45 in the IB, all right? Getting a 45 in the IB requires you to make some extraordinary leaps. All right. The biggest, really the only thing I did was just study 3 to 4 hours every single day. Most people might not actually be able to do that for whatever reason. I think everyone can, but some people might not want to. That might not be your lifestyle for whatever reason. I think you can if you want to, but some people might not want to. That is completely okay. All right. That's fine. You don't need to necessarily be like me. But if you want to have time with your friends, if you want to actually live your life and not sell your soul to the IB, I would spend some time to outline what type of person you want to be, what type of lifestyle you want to live. And then when you have that clearly set out, you can then start to identify the habits that you need, the routines, and everything that you need to be doing consistently throughout the IB process in order to become that person and live that lifestyle that you want. Okay, that is it. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to get and read my extended essay for free, you can do so in the link down below. Simply type in extended essay, one word with capitals or no capitals, doesn't matter. Just make sure it's one word, no space, extended essay in the link down below, grizzly.com/EasterEgg, and you'll get that sent to your email address absolutely for free. Please do so down below. And until next time, I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions at all, please leave them in the comment section down below or shoot me an email at JqR@Wharton.penn.edu. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, stay grizzly. I'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.